design. So that was mostly involving working with the operations team that did projects related to the customer and employee experience, managing the budget, working with them on their capital projects, stuff like that. And then in 2019, I changed teams and am now in my current role on the flight profitability system. So primarily working with the network planning team, which is the team at United that decides, where we fly, how frequently, what type of airplanes we fly on, and providing them with data as far as how profitable their routes are, helping them make decisions as to where we should fly, where we should stop flying, and how much. So that kind of takes me to where I am now. Like I said, living in Chicago. Did just get married 2 months ago, and enjoying the flight benefits. Was just in Portland and Atlanta thanks to my being able to fly with United and other airlines. So been enjoying it, and yeah, I think that is pretty much it.
I think we should note that Benji did fly Delta on his way from Portland to Atlanta. So just throwing it out there that even United flies on Delta.
I did fly Delta, and they did get me there on time this time, to their credit. But Delta was pretty helpful. Portland, Atlanta, unfortunately, it was not a United market, but flew Southwest from Atlanta to Chicago, so they were pretty good too.
Perfect, Matt. We'd love to hear a little about yourself, your current career position, and anything else you'd like to share with us.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm originally from Los Angeles. I forgot to mention, so I do live in Atlanta, and I joined once I joined Delta. So Delta is headquartered in Atlanta, and I pretty much moved to Atlanta for Delta, and it's a great city. I really love it down here. But yeah, graduated from IU in 2014. I joined through one of those undergrad analyst programs at Delta. And did a first rotation in customer experience and strategy in reservations. So I did that for about a year and a half. And then I pivoted pretty much like a career change within the same company. So I pivoted over to revenue management, where I did pricing for the transatlantic organization. So thinking through like North America pricing from the United States to Europe. And then I actually did inventory, which is also in revenue management and similar. And maybe at some point in this call, I'll kind of share what the differences between pricing and inventory are. It's kind of the core two roles of revenue management, and very popular when it comes to people with business backgrounds and analytical skills, and finance is a common major of RM employees. But I was in Atlanta for 3.5 years. So from 2014 to 2017, and then in 2018, I actually took an expat position based in Amsterdam. So I was in Amsterdam for 3 years, and that was an incredible experience. So Delta has a really great expat program where they really set you up for success while abroad. So I was very fortunate to live in Amsterdam for 3 years, and I actually just moved back to the United States in March. And so now I'm back in Atlanta and actually working for the Alliances organization. And I'm focused on the partnership with WestJet in Canada and Virgin Australia. So pretty interesting path, but definitely still learning in my new role. I've been in my new role, I guess, a little over 2 months now. So a lot going on in that space. So yeah.
Awesome, great to hear. So Benji, we'd like to start maybe a little question with you. Would you be able to compare the overall airline industry as well as really your day-to-day job pre-COVID and what it looks like today? And right when COVID happened, around March/April 2020, what was going on in your office? How were you guys handling it, and what were your go-to next steps?
Yeah, sure. So when COVID first hit it really was in Asia, as we all know, and United was definitely exposed early on because United is the largest US carrier in Asia. So as soon as it hit China, the stock price was affected. The company started getting a little bit nervous, seeing how much of the Pacific business was being impacted. And then, within a few weeks and definitely within a few months, it became very clear that it was impacting Europe and it was going to be making its way into America. By the time we got to March, I remember the day that I was with the network planning team, and they were saying they could not cancel enough flights. Like, they were essentially stripping the network down to its very, very core markets. Instead of hundreds of international departures, I think they were at 10 at the lowest. Really just flying the bare minimum to keep the airline running. And at that point, the airline was definitely in survival mode, just trying to secure enough and just get enough cash to survive paying the bills so the company could stay afloat. Fortunately, the government stepped in with the payroll protection program, and that kept enough employees on payroll. They were offering a lot of programs for employees to voluntarily leave. Just anything that they could do to get cash expenses as low as possible. It impacted my work mostly because my team provides the network planning team, like I said, with profitability metrics on all of the flights. And as you can imagine, when there are so few flights and so much overhead expense, the specific flights appear extremely unprofitable. And whereas in the past, the margins for an airline were probably in like the 10 to 15% range, during this time, the flights were in the negative many hundreds. So to make the data more usable and informative for the network planning team, we came up with alternative metrics that they could use to see, instead of how profitable was the flight considering all of the company's expenses, showing things like how profitable was the flight just accounting for the true incremental costs. It's like things like the fuel expense, the maintenance on the plane, the flight attendants, the pilots, and then at least then was their money being made. And if not, it indicated that even those routes should be canceled or postponed. So that was kind of our immediate reaction, was modifying our data to make it more usable. The whole company was just on a true, cash preservation approach. And then I'd say by the time we got to, by the time that the government, had finalized its support program, the company knew it was at least going to survive. And then it was about how do we optimize the schedule and the network during this time of pre-vaccine, not many people flying, but what was that right amount of flights to operate where we were making money on a short-term basis, but not overextending the network. And that kind of took us to end of 2021, to where the vaccine started coming out, people started flying more. And now we are in, I think all airlines would say that they're in a position where things are mostly getting back to normal. I think we'll probably get into, how much past COVID are we right now, but
sure.
But I can say we are at least to the point where, all the airlines are going to survive. Definitely the passenger demand rebound is coming, and the worst is definitely behind us.
I have a quick follow-up question to that. Especially during the height of COVID, if an airline has to stop flying a route fully, are they able to do that, or would they in theory lose that gate space that they are allotted? Are they able to just stop, or do they still have to have some routes functioning?
So that's a good question. So one answer is when the government did, pass the payroll support program and gave billions of dollars to the airlines, it came with several strings attached, and one of them was that every station that we fly to has to remain on the flight map. So we could cancel, for example, Chicago to Seattle, but we couldn't cancel every Seattle market. So there were some terms that we had to follow. So even the unprofitable markets where people were not flying, we still had to at least have some service to that city so that those customers would not be left with nothing. But then there also are markets that are slot controlled, which is where you have slots that the company owns. It's like an asset. And if you do give up those slots, then another airline can come in and take them. So an example is London Heathrow, I think, is one that has pretty valuable slots. So companies it would be a big decision if you want to give up those slots for the short-term gain or keep flying there even if it's unprofitable. One note about that is United did get JFK slots back, which they've been trying to do for many years now. And because of all of the openings that were made available due to COVID, United is back in JFK for the first time in a while. So that was one silver lining for United that came out of this.
Finally, they are, to say the least.
Yeah.
Matthew, I have a question for you, and I'd love you to relate it kind of to personal and professional level, if you don't mind. Do you think the airline industry is truly out of the COVID downturn, maybe leisure travelers versus business travelers? And if not, what do you think the future looks like? How long do you think this will be? I know July 4th had record numbers. And even in the recent months, there are a record number of travelers, but what does that record number of travelers really mean?
Sure. So, well, one thing about the slots, because that's actually something that I'm working on with WestJet. So with those slot controlled airports, there's actually the FAA, they issued what's called slot waivers. So if you don't operate all of your slots from an airport, then you don't lose them. And that's been in place for domestic, so within the United States, since pretty much the beginning of COVID. And they just now removed that slot waiver program for domestic, but it's still in place for international. So for example, LaGuardia to Toronto, WestJet would fly that, let's say 7 times a day. If they only want to fly it 1 time per day, then they can still own the LaGuardia slots, but they don't have to give those up. So that's something that's kind of interesting and is actually something that I've been closely tied to. But to answer your question about whether I think we're out of the pandemic or not, or what our travel base looks like, I think it's definitely changed. So you'll see a lot of airlines kind of shifting their network towards more leisure heavy destinations. So Salt Lake City, Denver, like Colorado, like Wyoming, all these places that are very leisure oriented have seen a big boom for sure. Whereas like our mainstay business routes, of course, are back, but not to the same degree. Like Atlanta, New York is probably Delta's biggest corporate, or JFK, LA, right? That's huge. San Francisco, LA. And of course, everybody's still flying those, but you're not getting that same valuable corporate traffic that you did in the past that's paying for these business class fares. And for Europe as well, right? Like there's been a surge in premium travel, but non-corporate, and that's partially driven by reduced airfares in the business cabin and first class cabins. But yeah, I think the industry is definitely going to change. You're also hearing a lot about work from home policies. We still think that our corporate is going to come back strong, but we don't really anticipate that until January, once offices really start to fully reopen and be back at it. And it'll be interesting to see like how that changes, especially with some of our largest corporates, the big four, both from the accounting but also consulting side. A lot of them saying, work from home policies, and that's something that we kind of keep an eye on, and we'll kind of see like whether travel returns to the same level from the corporate standpoint. But yeah, from leisure, I think it's back.
Very interesting standpoint. And one thing, Matthew, that you may be very aware of, American Airlines' new partnership co-chair with JetBlue Airlines. Since you are in the alliance department and you were kind of talking about the partner over in Canada that you're working with, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think it will have a negative effect for other airlines, or do you really think this alliance is nothing much?
Yeah. So that's definitely something that our team has kept an eye on, and it's pretty interesting how American Airlines and JetBlue approached their partnership. So they took a very different path to that, and they did it on the second to last day of Trump's administration and didn't go through the normal regulatory pathway. So typically, airlines will consult with the Department of Transportation, so the DOT, or the Department of Justice, the DOJ. And that partnership did neither of those. They just went straight to the administration and kind of got a very unique type of approval. And I'm working on implementing a joint venture with WestJet, and they have, like, it's definitely impacted our approach. We were pretty surprised to see that. It's not every day where the Department of Justice sues two of your biggest competitors for a partnership that you're not implementing, of course, the same, but we were trying to think, we of course, every airline is always thinking strategically about the best approach. I will say that once you submit an application for joint venture, and a joint venture is really where you share cost and revenue with another airline, and that's supposed to make both airlines and customers what we call metal neutral, so that they'll fly on WestJet or Delta, and that profit is shared amongst the two of us. And so, yeah, we were just trying to think strategically about different routes we could take, and when you submit for a joint venture with the DOT, unfortunately, it takes almost 2 years or more, and that's really frustrating and quite painfully slow. Actually, Delta did submit for a JV partnership with WestJet back in 2018, and then November 2020, Delta heard back from the Department of Transportation that yes, you can do a joint venture, but to do so, you need to give up all of these slots at LaGuardia. So we kind of talked about slots, so it feeds in well to that, but you need to give up these slots, and Delta and WestJet were not willing to give up the slots. So we removed our application for joint venture and are now thinking about different ways to pursue that. But anyway, I know I'm going on for a while here, but it is definitely interesting about the Department of Justice pursuing American and JetBlue's partnership. And we actually think part of that might be from, obviously stemming from the Biden administration, but the DOJ is not fully staffed. They have not, they're supposed to be getting the head of the DOJ has not been approved yet by the Senate committee. So we think that the staff that kind of pursued this are just being really aggressive. So
sure,
yeah,
great point. Good point, interesting perspective. Benji, I'd like to switch it back to you. Question, we all, many of us, not all, but many follow the airline industry's financial quarterly reportings. Can you explain what analysts, including analysts in your department, look for? What are some key indicators and metrics that are necessary for a flight to be truly considered profitable and to keep running?
Yeah, sure. So that is actually pretty good timing because airlines are reporting their third quarter earnings this week. Delta went last week and United is actually reporting theirs tomorrow. So, I mean, the big things that like investor analysts look for are definitely going to be the, unit revenues and unit costs. So there are metrics that allow airlines to compare their revenues and costs kind of on a relative basis. And they do it by showing what was the revenue or cost per, they call it available seat mile. So any seat that travels 1 mile is recorded as one, and then you show how much revenue or cost you made per that unit. So it allows airlines of different sizes to be able to compare their their results with each other. So the big thing on the revenue side is, passenger revenue. So this you want to see, obviously passenger revenue grow quarter over quarter. I think right now United is projecting the next quarter to be around 25 to 30% lower than it was in the same time period in 2019. So it's kind of getting back up to where things were. There were months this year and last year when it was down, 70, 80%. So that's the biggest thing. There are different sources of revenue. So, passenger revenue being the biggest one. Cargo revenue was a big one that United was able to leverage. So flying more cargo only flights, which was something that I've never seen happen before at United. So that helped to supplement the revenue where passenger revenue was so low. And then on the cost side, the biggest expense is definitely fuel expense. I know when Delta went last week, they reported fuel costs to be increasing in the fourth quarter, and that was not helpful to their stock price. So definitely something that's affecting all airlines, but one of those kind of uncontrollable, for the most part, cost items that have a large impact on the net margin and net profit. And then, other things, the next biggest expenses are going to be labor related. So, managing the pilot, flight attendant populations, utilizing them as effectively as possible. I know during the pandemic, there were programs to, keep them on payroll, but fly them less than they're contractually obligated to. So there were programs like United, most pilots, for example, are required to be paid for 73 hours of flying per month. And there were programs where they could take 50 hours of pay without flying at all, but then they wouldn't be paid anything more than that. So kind of just different programs to, reduce the guaranteed pay, salary payments. So I would say those are probably the biggest things. As far as what makes a flight profitable, it definitely comes down to the demand environment. So, how expensive are the fares? They call it, how full are the planes? So they call it load factor is how, occupied the plane is. So, where we used to average probably 85, 90% occupancy on the planes. During COVID, it was as low as maybe, 30, 40%, and that was on way fewer flights. So you kind of look for those, yeah.
With that thought in mind, how do airlines determine to use a wide body jet or narrow body?
Yeah, I think
what are the factors that go into that?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. The biggest thing is going to be looking at, historical performance, seeing what was the demand for that market. I think, especially during COVID, if they can fill part of the plane with things like cargo that, utilize the space on the plane really efficiently, it allows you to fly bigger planes, even if you can't fill it up all the way. But yeah, I think it's also if you want to provide a more premium experience. So you may not have a full plane, but you have a lot of premium seats to offer. That could open up opportunities to fly wide bodies. But I think at the end of the day, it mostly comes down to, how popular is the route, how far, like how far is the one destination from the other, and if it doesn't have a lot of demand, can it handle a small plane? Some of them require larger planes just due to the distance. Mm-hmm. So I would say mostly those factors.
For sure.
Also fuel.
Right. Yes.
I was just going to add fuel. Fuel is really such a core expense for the airline, and so if you look at fuel price and then compare that to how an airline did in X year. It's highly correlated. So years where fuel is, at a lower price point is definitely years where an airline is profitable. And then once fuel goes up, profitability goes out the window. So yeah, something to keep in mind.
Hey, Matt.
I
Yeah,
actually think
go
this is
for
a
it.
great time to go into Q&A. I have a few more questions, but I think it's better because a bunch of people have questions. So I guess Ethan, go for it if you have the first question.
Oh, sure. No, thanks so much. First of all, I think this is awesome. You guys are super fascinating topic. Definitely one of the higher attended sessions. So thank you guys both for making the time. I have two questions. One's more financial, and then one's more about experience. I guess the first question is on fuel, just because it's such a important input. Like, how much management of the cost is there, like through like some hedging strategies? Like, I would imagine there's ways to reduce some of the variability in fuel costs, like if you were to enter into long-term contracts or think about other kind of mitigants to just like taking whatever the daily fuel swing is. That's my first question. And my second question is more just on the experience side, and the question there is, pre-pandemic, all the airlines were really investing in experiences for customers, specifically in the business first category. And I think the best example of this was the JFK to LAX or JFK to SFO routes, where you would see on American flagship first, and then the business class product, United Polaris, and then Delta One, and they're really kind of competing with each other on food, on comfort, on partnerships with like Saks Fifth Avenue, all these things, and that kind of went out the window, including like meals not even being provided. So I'm just curious, like, where does that experience you kind of shake out after everything is said and done with the pandemic? Like, do you see it coming back, or do you see some of those seats being reconverted to kind of more standard, just regular economy or economy plus seats?
Yeah, those are good questions. So when it comes to, I can talk to fuel a little bit, and then also touch on the experience, and then Benji, if you want to jump in and add. So on fuel, yeah, there's a lot of different strategies that airlines can take. So there is hedging, which is where you pretty much buy fuel at a certain price point today, and then use that. Then you're locked in at that price for the next X amount of years, whatever contract you signed in on, and that can be like a make or break situation for you. So Delta usually does not hedge. I think we have in the past. But I believe we did have some hedging, but then of course, when fuel plummeted during COVID, you're still paying, $4 a gallon or like $5 a gallon when the market price is $2 a gallon. So then that's pretty negative. Delta actually bought an oil refinery back in 2016 in Pennsylvania. Like, we thought that was a good strategy, and that also during COVID, that was pretty expensive. And so I think we tried selling it. I don't even know if we still own it or not. We've tried to get rid of that, but yeah, there's so many strategies you can take, and it's just so hard to predict and know what's going to happen with that. And then from the experience side, I would say it's definitely coming back already, and will probably come back as corporate travel returns. So there are meals again, and there's like all these bougie ice creams and like companies that restaurants were partnering with, like out of LAX. Jordan, what's that Italian restaurant?
John and Vinny's.
John and Vinny's. So like, Delta has John and Vinny's out of LA on corporate routes. So like, yeah, JFK, LA, I think LA, LA Boston, I think they also have it. So yeah, they're definitely coming back, and will probably continue to do so, especially as corporate travel rebounds. So, yeah.
Got it. That's super helpful.
Yeah, I can give a quick United perspective. Definitely agree with what Matt said. I think one more thing for fuel that United does, and I'm sure other airlines too, but it's called tankering, where you load more fuel than you need on a given flight if the fuel price is more expensive at the place you land. So, it does cost more to fly a heavier plane with more fuel, but if you can save on the price when you land, that's one other strategy that I know United has been doing more recently. We also don't hedge, but I think also United used to, but not anymore. I think Southwest is the airline most known for hedging. Otherwise, I don't think we see it very often. As far as the customer experience, also definitely agree with Matt, definitely coming back. I know for United, one of the key things that they are trying to improve on for the customer experience is just the fleet, like aircraft experience. So there was just a large order for hundreds of new, next generation Boeing aircraft that have, large overhead bins and entertainment screens on each seat, and the new business class cabin and stuff, all stuff like that. So definitely, I think utilizing the COVID downtime to actually make progress on some of these customer initiatives, so that when people do come back, they can start to see the benefits of these programs take place.
Angie, I'm going to tell the fuel team about your tankering tip. I'm taking notes over here.
Wait, this is a privileged chat over here. So, you had us on an NDA when you logged into this.
Mm-hmm.
I think we got a couple lawyers on the call, so maybe the lawyers can attest that no NDA was signed in this one.
Great one, guys. I think next, maybe Jason. Do you have a question?
Thank you so much, and thank you both, Benji and Matt. This is awesome. Again, my main question is really, and you guys talked about a little bit with cargo flights, but I'm just curious, how have airlines responded to the overall global supply chain crisis? I mean, obviously, we've been seeing the past couple of days with various ports, like the port of LA being backed up significantly, things like that. Personally, with my work, I have a lot of product coming from Asia, and we've had to air freight a number of items and that's our last resort. We always prefer doing ocean freight, but we've had to air freight a number of items just because of crazy lead times. So I'm curious how the supply chain crisis has helped or hurt you. I mean, in that case, we're using airlines more. But then also just a silly question, but is Tuesday really the best day to book a flight?
All right, I can start with the cargo question, because we do work pretty closely with the cargo team to assess how profitable these cargo only missions, as they call it, have been this past year. During the peak of COVID, it was a huge program where they were flying over 1,000 flights a month with only cargo and no passengers, and they were doing really well, and it was really helpful to supplement the passenger flights. And we had all these spare planes that were not being used anyway. So I know the United Cargo team was getting a lot of praise and attention for these flights. They then stopped those flights when the vaccines came out and passengers started flying again, because it is more profitable to fly passengers and fit the cargo in the planes. But just this month, they did bring back the cargo flights, and I think in large part due to the supply chain issues around the world. I know, for example, United has been flying a lot of Pelotons back and forth to, I think, from the factories in Asia, which I thought was kind of a cool one. But yeah, no, definitely working with the Postal Service and the different cargo shipping companies. It's been a big part of the business. I would say still not as profitable as a solid passenger flight, but where you have the opportunities to use the planes, it definitely has been making sense. Matt, you can fill in on that, or also you're the pricing expert here, so I'm curious about the Tuesday question too.
Yeah, so I think Benji's definitely going to know more about the cargo than I will, because his ties with finance, and also United is definitely a better cargo carrier than Delta. So I can admit that, Benji. I think you can take that one.
Oh my gosh.
We'll give you cargo and we'll take everything else. It's just, no, so I can say though, I was while I was in Amsterdam when when COVID was first hitting, I managed inventory for Italy, and that included Milan. And what was pretty interesting is that we saw a really large spike in demand for cargo to Milan. So we were still flying passenger aircraft to and from JFK Milan with very few passengers and a lot of guns, actually. So that was something that really peaked. And we were, for a product like that, you can charge a premium. And so that was a pretty interesting experience for me. But I have pretty little involvement with cargo. And then when it comes to best day to book, yeah, so that's the like kind of rumor. I don't really believe that's true. The best time to book a flight, honestly, is during a price war, and that's hard to come by, and that doesn't really happen all the time. But I can just like share some quick tips. So at least for sure for Europe, you want to, I mean, obviously you want to buy as far out as possible. Like 50 days in advance is great. 28 days is another big ticker. So once a flight kind of comes within what we call advanced purchase, comes within 50 days advanced purchase, or 28 days advanced purchase, 21 days, 14, it always, fares tend to jump up. During COVID, those have kind of shrunk because people are buying a lot closer in. So instead of a typical passenger buying a flight, 23 days in advance, they're now buying flights like 17, or I'm not sure about those numbers, but people are buying much closer in. Cheapest days to fly for sure are Tuesday and Wednesday. And then for Europe, you want to fly during winter season. So like, February is probably the cheapest month to fly to Europe, but who wants to do that, right? And also that applies for domestic too. That winter season is typically cheaper. What other tips can I give?
Hey, Matt,
you want to stay? Go ahead.
Would you also be able to just say what a price war is and what like mistake fares are? Because I'm sure people have all heard about that, but what is that from actual someone inside Delta? What does that mean?
Sure. So a price war is when, I was a pricer, so I've been in a few price wars myself. It's pretty much when, I gotta say this in the right way. So let's say American Airlines, whose hubs are Dallas and Madrid, okay? When it comes to North America to Europe, Dallas, Madrid, okay, for American Airlines. And Deltas are Atlanta to Amsterdam. Let's say American Airlines files a fare, so lowers the price in Atlanta to Amsterdam by $200 for economy. Delta is going to defend their share position, and we are going to what we call recapture share, or go to a price war with American Airlines. So likely, if American Airlines were to do that in Delta's hubs, we would then most likely file $200 cheaper fare in Dallas to Madrid. And sometimes that kind of spirals downward, and it's not good for nobody. But I also said this in a pretty like a loud way, if that makes sense. The way we talk about it, well, yeah, I think that's a good way to describe what a price war is. And was there another question? I can't remember.
I think David Charney, you just joined a little late. I know you were in the middle of something, but any questions you have or want to jump in for the panel?
Oh, I was just laughing at the last comment that unless you live in Dallas and you want to go to Madrid, it could be good for some consumers.
Yeah.
I guess I've always thought of airplanes not being efficient for batteries or any sort of concept of Tesla hybrid battery, anything other than gas petroleum. I even heard that boats were going to adopt electrical because of the harbor laws in Europe. Any other chatter or theories in the airplane space that could be alternate sources of energy, or no way, Jose?
There are always patents being filed for crazy things in the aviation space. So who knows what really will come of it. I don't know, Benji, if you have any other insight. The big thing now is SAF. So that's like sustainable aviation fuels. And I think we can be honest that we're all lobbying the US government for tax credits or I think discounts on SAF. So I don't even know what SAF is made of, like corn. I'm honestly not sure, but Benji, I don't know if you know anything else there. Yeah, there's always crazy things coming out and ideas, and maybe we'll see it in our, I would imagine we'll see it in our lifetime, but they're like all airlines are committing to like I don't know, a lot of airlines are committing to like 10% of our fuel costs. Our fuel will be SAF by 2030 even. I'm not really sure, but also newer aircraft is really huge on fuel savings. So like a new plane is typically, I don't know, what, 20% more fuel efficient than the last plane that it's replaced, or even more. But I don't know, Benji, if you know more than I do.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that we are still a ways out from aircraft being able to operate without gas. I know, like, yeah, the SAF, like the sustainable fuel initiatives, are definitely making progress. So it's becoming more sustainable. The other thing is, you know, the main aircraft that we think of today require fuel, but there are a lot of like startup companies that are called, like, they're electric taxis. So they're like eVTOL, which is electric vertical takeoff and landing. So more helicopter-y than airplane-y, but they are starting to be looked into by airlines. But I know United placed a $1 billion investment / purchase in one of these electric taxi companies. So probably more going to be used for like smaller market, like where you may be on a flight that has a 50-seat airplane. You could replace those like small flights with these electric taxis instead, but will definitely be pretty limited in how they can be used for the time being.
Yeah, and Delta definitely thinks those investments are going to crash and burn. So
Yeah.
good luck with those. Let me know how finance takes that one on. Yeah, have you written it off yet?
I think it could be a big hit. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, there was also a big investment in the Boom supersonic jets, which claimed to cut the travel time in half between the US and Europe or Asia. Those I'm a little more skeptical about because they were tried in the past and did not work out at all. So I think for
Literally crashed
United,
and burned.
yeah, literally crash and burn. Yeah, I think for United, these are like considered kind of risk-free investments because I think if they don't work out, then the investment is returned. But if they do work out, then it's a leg up in the electric aircraft space. So that's what they tell finance, at least.
Can I ask, it seems like both of you know a ton about the industry, your airlines, even things outside of your own roles, like Peloton's being transported in oil refineries and all this other information. How do you keep up with all of that? How do you learn about all of that? And do you find that that's necessary for your roles or to kind of like grow within your company?
Yeah, I can start. I think that I'd say first of all, it's kind of inherent in the work that we do, like especially on my team now, where it's so focused on the network itself. You know, we will get questions as to, you know, why did business between USA and Brussels increase this month? And, you know, then you look into it and you find that kind of interesting things, like there are this new partnership with Peloton. But I think it's also, I mean, I think we're both just very interested in the industry. So, you know, I always have a tab open on my computer with United Airlines news articles and then just like airline news articles in general. So I think it's kind of a bit of both, just like being interested in it, but also, you know, as questions come along and like working with so much data all the time, you kind of just see it more and more every day.
Yeah, no, I think that's like accurate. I think there are a lot of people at every airline who they're called like av geeks who just know so much about the industry, and that I would say Benji and I are not those. But it's like very common to kind of keep up with just like what's going on in the industry, and if someone's interested in like what is happening, actually a great way to kind of stay up to date with that is Delta News Hub, or like I'm sure United has an equivalent like United News Hub, and you can sign up for like daily emails, and so I get those for Delta, and it's kind of like anything big going on at the company, any large announcements usually that are public come through those. So yeah.
Hey, Alan,
I have a quick
I
question.
see. Oh, sorry. You could go first, and then Alan, I know, has a question, so you could go after that in that order, if that works.
I'm sorry, you said you want me to go first?
Yes, go for it,
Oh, okay,
please.
sorry. As a consumer, can you guys tell me what is out there on the cutting edge that's going to make my consumer experience as a passenger better? What is out there other than just, hey, I can play games? You know, what are you going to do to make me more comfortable?
High-speed Wi-Fi. So that's the big thing nowadays. And I mean, as you know, that was a team that I was also interested in pursuing. But high-speed Wi-Fi is really going to change the game for onboard experience. There's a lot that's coming down with that, and I think I think it's fair to say that Delta's kind of ahead of the curve on that in terms of what we're rolling out, and it's going to be free. So I'm not just talking about texting on board, which is free already, but you'll be able to stream Netflix on your phone, from 30,000 feet in the air, which is a pretty big deal, and pretty exciting, and it's coming pretty soon. So I think in 2022 is when it will be free on Delta, and I think we're hoping that that's something that's going to distinguish Delta from the competition. Like, especially as we target millennials and whatever gen you want to call it, where you always want to target a younger crowd. Wi-Fi is just so important.
Easy there, Buster.
Yeah. Wi-Fi is just so important as an experience. So I think Wi-Fi is kind of the big thing that's being pushed through. So I don't know, Benji, what are you? I don't know if I'm giving away secrets now, but I think that's pretty public. I don't know what you guys are doing over there.
I'll have to tell my team about this. Yeah, just kidding. No, I would say other things like that I can think of are other like technology improvements. Things like there's a new program called Connection Saver where the system can calculate how long we can hold a flight for without making any connecting customers or even the arrival time impacted. So, instead of shutting the door exactly when the departure time hits, if we can wait a few minutes, bring on new customers from connecting flights, things like that just help small pieces at a time. There's also a, like remote agent work. So where there's long lines at airports, if they're having, weather issues and you see really long lines at the counter, having the option to scan a QR code and it connects you to an available agent from a different airport. Things like, I know Delta does this already, but like being able to pre-order meals or snacks and beverages on the plane was something that like you couldn't do in the past, and you may see like flights where they don't have your first preference. So I think there's like so many of these kind of small projects that the hope is will add up and make it a better customer experience for really everybody on the flight.
Thank you. And my last question is, since you guys are providing us with all this inside information, and since United's, I guess, earnings are coming out tomorrow, come on, Benji, should we buy or sell? Let's go.
I can't tell you what to do, but I can tell you not to not buy. But no, actually, so United did release its third quarter financial statements after hours today, and I think we missed, it went up 2%. So I think we needed to invest right before this call. But I would say
my last comment is, I just got to say, for both of you guys, you look so much better on Zoom than you do in person. Well done.
So there's a famous quote from Warren Buffett. It's, if you ever want to become a millionaire, invest $1 billion in an airline. So it's not always the greatest idea to invest, but yeah.
Okay, great. Does anyone else have any more questions?
I actually have another question, if I could loop back, if that's okay.
Go for it.
I have lots of questions, but I'm not gonna bore everyone with them. One question that I have actually though is a little bit more on the ground experience side. So I know that all the airlines have been making a lot of efforts on the ground side. So with lounges and just generally like other improvements to the kind of airport experience. So I guess my question there is, can you talk a little bit about that and like how those decisions are made in terms of like investing in like lounges? Clearly, there's like other competition from players like American Express, which is doing like their Centurion lounge product. So like, how does that come into play, and like where do you decide where to place lounges? And then the second question is, around loyalty programs. I guess one, how important are those actually to the airline, and like what's the percentage of profit, or at least in terms of some metric that comes from frequent flyers versus kind of just like the general public? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I can start. So for the clubs and lounges, I know for United, the big push has been on the Polaris Lounge program. So this is really a push for premium customers, and United's hubs being in the big business markets. I think it is trying to stand out in this way. So like we've got New York and Chicago and Houston and San Francisco, LA, like are the big hubs, and there's obviously a lot of business traffic coming from there. So United had built these, kind of like exclusive Polaris lounges where it is, full dining service. You need to be on an international business class ticket to be able to enter, but it is one of the big perks of having one of those premium tickets. And then for the regular clubs, I mean, I know it's, it's a tough one because, that is very competitive space. I think United probably has maybe like 40 clubs or so domestically, and I think the newest ones have been built in like maybe New Orleans and Nashville. But I think looking at places where there's a lot of local traffic, maybe the competitors have it, and we're trying to build or maintain market share there. So it's definitely an investment. It's a lot to build and it's a lot to maintain. But I know like the regular frequent travelers, do love having that space to go to before flying. And the loyalty program, I don't know too much about it, but I know United has a strong partnership with Chase, where Chase, purchases a lot of miles from United to give as rewards to their credit card holders. So it's a really good source of revenue, especially during the pandemic, where while flying volumes went way down, people were still spending on their credit cards, and Chase was a big purchaser of United miles, and I think United gets a relatively good deal for those miles that they purchase for the customers. So it's definitely a big push. I've been on flights where watching a movie and you hear that announcement trying to sell the credit card, and it's kind of annoying, but it is clearly important to all the airlines to get as many people enrolled in the credit cards and part of the frequent flyer programs, so that they become more exclusive to your airline. So definitely has been and still is a big push.
Yeah, so I can add a little bit to that. So in terms of club selection and location, I'm not that familiar how Delta does it, but obviously, yeah, it is pretty valuable to get that corporate traffic. So I can't add much there, but on the loyalty side, I think Delta kind of takes the lead, especially with their partnership with Amex. So I think pre-COVID, we entered into a new contract with Amex, and I think we anticipated that was going to generate $5 billion in 5 years, over the course of 5 years. I think that obviously has changed with COVID, but it was a very lucrative deal for Delta. And getting people to sign up for the Delta branded Amex is a really big push, and we see spend, or not so much spend, but we see loyalty towards Delta once they have an Amex card is just insurmountable. So it's really very important to Delta to get signups. And I have to say, I flew on American, I think maybe a few months ago because I had to. And I was really annoyed by all of the ads for their credit card, like interrupting like the flight and everything. I was really surprised actually. And so sounds like United has that too, which doesn't surprise me. But I don't think Delta does that in the same way. But yeah, it is definitely important to get that loyalty to a brand. So
Thanks.
Yeah.
Awesome. Anyone else want to jump in?
I have another question, if I can.
Go for it.
And by the way, Matt, I do attest to that, as I have a Amex Platinum, and I definitely lean towards flying Delta, especially for the Sky Club. So thank you for your service and providing that amenity to me. But but one other aspect of Delta that I enjoyed during COVID, at least, and I'm very curious about the thought that went into this, was how Delta, I think it was like one of the longest airlines to block the middle seat during COVID. And I mean, back when I was super paranoid about COVID, but also had to travel, it definitely helped me choose. Like, I always would choose Delta over another airline, even if I'm spending $100 more on the ticket, because of that safety. And so I'm curious about what the what the uptick in business was when Delta had that in place, and also if you're experiencing more personal travel, more consumers upgrading to first and business class now during this COVID time because they're looking for more space and social distancing and things like that.
Yeah, so no, definitely that was a big decision. And you know, early on in the pandemic, it wasn't that big a deal because we weren't filling our planes to 66%, right? If you take the assumption that we're not filling a middle seat, so that means 33% of our plane, we can't fill it. But yeah, when we were flying, you know, load factors below 50%, it didn't really matter. But then to hold on to that middle seat block through, I believe it was March. It was
end of April.
End of April. Thank you. Yeah. So I did inventory for the team during the pandemic, and so I can only fill my planes to 66%. And it wasn't that bad until later on. Well, I did Europe, so it wasn't a big deal. But for domestic travel, once domestic was back up and running, it was pretty costly. That was definitely a costly decision. And from a revenue management perspective, it was a tough sell. Like, our team was not exactly thrilled with it, if I'm being honest, because we make less money. There's just no doubt about it. But it's something that came from the top of the top. Like, Ed Bastian was like, man, it was said, like, this is what we're going to do for our passengers. And like, whether the science says something different or not, it doesn't matter. Like, people feel more comfortable, and that's what we're going to do. Because, you know, United did do like a research about like how much COVID transmits, whether there's people in the middle seat or not, and all that. But at the end of the day, if you don't, you know, people are just nervous about sitting next to another person. And sure, it scientifically it did a little bit, but if everyone's really wearing masks properly, then yeah. But no, it was a very costly decision, especially in the very beginning of 2021, which feels so long ago. But yeah.
Yeah, I can say from the United perspective, it was definitely something that I wish United did, because as a consumer, I would have felt much more comfortable with the middle seat open. When United did, as Matt said, partner with the Department of Defense and did studies that showed, you know, transmission on airplanes is so low because of the filtration system and all that. But with that being said, it would have been nice to be able to guarantee some space between seats. Which, you know, most of the time did happen on its own, but not always.
Has there been that uptick at all in first class or business class because of that now?
Yeah, definitely. I forgot to answer that part of it, but for sure. We're seeing a much more strong business class purchase for leisure destinations, which is atypical. Especially over the summer. Like, premium traffic was quite strong. Another question I forgot to answer, Eric, that you asked me earlier in the call, but I remembered later on. You asked me about where pricing mistakes. So the best way to catch a pricing mistake, so sucks for anyone who dropped off early, but secretflying.com does a pretty good job of picking up on those. As a pricer, sometimes we'd even consult secretflying.com to see if there's something out there that we've done incorrectly, or if there's something like hot on Secret Flying, we will take that into account. We all kind of like get the daily emails, and if we spot something, we'll address it. So sometimes they catch it before we do.
I'm not sure how much time we have. I have another question.
We have as much time as you guys have, so please answer. Please question away.
On the topic of the middle seats and kind of doing something that is maybe against the science or the math of it, are there other things like that that are maybe, you know, for the altruistic side or the marketing side, but that the numbers don't agree with it, that you have seen your airlines do?
Reggie? Nothing in particular. Like, I know a big thing. I think Delta now charges like $5 for Wi-Fi. Like, you can text for free, but then for Wi-Fi, it's $5 per flight. And I remember when that was first coming out, there was a lot of work done in the background, which I wasn't necessarily involved with, but like we did the math about like cost and, you know, cost analysis on that, and we wanted to charge $8 for every flight. And then, like, I think the executive team said, why are we charging $8? It's a weird number, let's just do $5. So that was like one of those, I don't know how altruistic that is, but that was a decision that kind of like was against the science, that just kind of comes down. So
yeah, the one example that I can think of is United was the first, besides Southwest, to waive change fees. So I know that was something that the CEO of United wanted to do, just, I don't know if it was altruism or just wanting to get customers to kind of get rid of, like, what's one of the more like annoying things for customers. You book a ticket and there's literally nothing you can do besides pay the $200 change fee plus the difference in fare. So I think it was actually going to happen regardless of the pandemic. And then the pandemic happened to kind of overshadow the announcement because everybody was waiving fees during the COVID crisis. But it was an announcement that was meant to be made in general, and kind of to compete with Southwest on having that flexibility. And I think, is there another one? I think
another one I can.
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to mention, like, from a revenue management standpoint. So when, like, for example, there's a hurricane coming through like South Florida, or actually when COVID first hit, and people were like fleeing, including myself included, like fleeing every country imaginable to enter back into the United States. Delta does put in like price caps. So I think a ticket could only be as much as like, I think domestically, like from South Florida during a hurricane, like $500. So that's the maximum amount, because right, like everyone wants to flee, and we just cap it, I think, at like 500 or something like that one way, which is still expensive, but I mean, given that everyone wants to get out of there, I think that's fairly reasonable. And then same thing for exiting Europe, which I was involved in terms of putting a price cap, but like I think it was maybe 2,000 one way was the price cap that we could put in place. So like, just to kind of like make sure, and also part of that is you don't want negative press. Like I think years ago there have been some airlines, like during hurricanes and stuff, that will get like, it'll pop up, then news will catch like, I'll be nice and say American charging like $6,000 to leave Florida during hurricane, right? Like you don't want that. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think to that point, there've actually been a lot of like humanitarian efforts by the airlines this past year, like whether it's transporting the vaccines or getting people out of Afghanistan when all that happened, or getting people home from India when the COVID crisis was really bad there. I think there have been a lot of examples. Yeah. Yeah.
Or flying hospital workers, any hospital workers that wanted to fly during like peak pandemic in 2020 could fly free on, I think, a variety of airlines, Delta included. So.
I think the airlines would be subjected to, it usually comes under the, I'll say, category of gouging. So, you know, am I correct on that, Jordan?
What was that?
He wasn't listening.
Hey, this isn't
what
law
show?
School. You can't fall asleep here.
Yeah, no, it's gouging. Yeah,
it's gouging. I mean, it comes under, you know, price gouging. when the airline or any business tries to take advantage of a situation and then starts charging through the roof, because as consumers, we have no choice. So, I don't know how it works in the airlines, but certainly every business or industry is subject to anti-gouging. So,
yeah, for sure.
Okay, great. If that's it, I guess back to you,
Can I
Rabbi
ask a
Sue.
question?
Oh, please.
Can I
Yes.
ask a question?
Yes, of course.
For both of you, firstly, is it true that Delta is more expensive than United? And if it is true, why does Delta have the right to make themselves more expensive than United?
So Delta, yeah. Oh, go ahead. I was just gonna say, no, it's true. Delta is like probably more expensive, not significantly, but it is more expensive than other US carriers. But we like to, I mean, it's actually something we're kind of proud of. So we're over indexed when it comes to it. So like for every $100 that United receives, or that that the US carriers receive, Delta receives like 109. And that just shows that, a lot of people think, oh, what airline you fly doesn't really matter. It's from A to B. But at the end of the day, people are going to pay for a better flight experience. And so we charge for that. We provide we like to think we provide a better experience, but we do charge a premium for that service. So that's not always the case, but yeah, it's true. Delta a lot of times can be one of the more expensive carriers in the market.
So Benji, why do you think they're more expensive?
I actually didn't know that they were more expensive, but I know Delta is in a position to charge for like the quote unquote premium service. I think it also depends obviously where you're flying, but I would believe it. Like, yeah, no, everything that Matt said makes sense. I think maybe in a year or two, United will be, just as expensive, but I don't know.
How many years have you been saying that for?
United.
Tell the group, Benji. Tell the group what you told me. He was saying how a lot of times, like United executives will look to Delta, which is not uncommon, that we'll see other airlines in the industry like replicate what Delta does. But Benji was just saying over the weekend how like United does kind of like strive towards Delta. Like we have a target on our back for sure, but it's been there for a while since I joined, honestly. But yeah,
no, that is true.
Years,
yeah, if you look at most metrics, and Delta definitely is the top. As far as customer satisfaction and on time and most things, Delta is the best. But it does create good motivation for United to have something to strive for. We're kind of in a fight with American to solidify that second position, but I know we have a leadership team that is committed to catching up to Delta, like financially and as far as customer experience goes.
Benji, that's an amazing PR statement that you just made.
Yeah, no, it is. No, I have to be honest. It is. United, really ever since the Dr. Dow incident in 2017, where he was dragged off the plane, like United has been very steadfast, focused on making those changes to its reputation, like knowing that customers, it went through like a real trough as far as customers' trust and confidence in the airline. But it is it's definitely on a mission to change that perception slowly but surely.
Matthew, since Benji provided his dad with that question to ask, is there any question you want me to ask on Delta's behalf? What's fair is fair.
No, I think we've heard enough from you for today.
Thanks, Matthew. I can always appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right, guys.
Oh, go ahead.
Anything else, or Rabbi Sue, you want to close?
I was just going to ask one quick question, but I don't have to. I was just going to ask that United has changed their loyalty program greatly over the last, maybe right before COVID. Does does Delta look at that or care, or Benji, has that been successful for them? I mean, it's hard to know because it was right before COVID, but it's very different than it used to be. And I think Delta's still using the same one that had been.
I can answer a little bit about that. So yeah, a lot of loyalty programs have changed both before the pandemic and during the pandemic, for sure. Benji, was the change that you went to a revenue based
Yeah, I know
program?
that happened, and then the change from like instead of upgrades to the point system. Is that the one you're talking about, Sue?
Well, I was actually talking about several things. One is that it's by segments now and not by distance, which is a huge, huge difference. And I don't think Delta's changed to that. So it's about like your status is based on the number of segments you fly as well as the amount of money that you spend, which is a huge, huge difference. And then just how you upgrade overseas has changed to points. That's what I think you were talking about, Benj.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Yeah, before you could take one long trip to Singapore and get silver status just on that alone. But now, so it's like good for people who travel domestically, bad for the ones who took a few long trips per year. I think the intention was to make it so you have to fly the airline more, and I think it is more exclusive to get the top status, so that there's, I think it's meant to be that there's fewer people with the top status so that they can, make those perks more exclusive and, limited to the top flyers. But I think more open to like getting lower level status. I don't know how successful it's been, but I know United did bring in a new head of loyalty and marketing, and it's been clear that he's had, his own ideas on what to change. But
so is it a good sign that they brought someone new in, or
was he brought in after the changes were made or before they were made?
I think before. I think he
okay.
came like 2018, and then I think they quickly like reshaped the team and came up with these changes. I mean, I know like when the news comes out, there are those people who, it's always like going to hurt some and help some. So I know a lot of people liked it. Some people didn't like it, but from what I've heard, I think people are a fan of this guy.
Yeah. No, definitely Delta does see what other airlines do, and sometimes will react to that or not. Like for the change fee example, for sure, like what Benji said, it was kind of something that Delta was always considering, and then once United kind of rolled that out, then Delta quickly followed suit, and so did every airline. But yeah, there's a lot of loyalty program changes that have gone in since COVID. Like another big one is that for Delta at least, is that if you use your miles to fly, then you can then earn miles back on them, if that makes sense. But yeah, so Delta still does have medallion qualification dollars that you use to gain status, and then you have an option of either segments or miles. So you hit different thresholds to get status. So I think Delta has a little bit more flexibility when it comes to pursuing via long haul or short haul. So yeah.
Thanks.
Rabbi Sue, has Jerry Latterman spoken recently? I know.
Not since when he spoke when you were around, right?
Yeah, Lauren, because Lauren's dad, right?
Yeah. Yeah, he doesn't have a kid there anymore, so we haven't asked him to speak, but he was really good. But now we have Benji.
He's still there though, right?
He's still at United, yeah.
Yeah.
I think he's the CFO.
Yep.
Benji knows him. Benji's not too far away from him.
Yeah.
Benji will have a meeting or two with him. Benji's a manager now, so if you want to talk to somebody high up, he's the guy to go to.
Yeah.
Benji meets with him every second week.
Yeah, no, it was cool because I remember Jason when he came to BLI when I was there too, and at that point he was just the senior VP, and then the CFO left and started his own new airline, and Jerry got promoted to the CFO role. So it actually has been pretty cool because we kind of do have that connection from BLI. So if this was the student BLI, it would be a good plug to attend because you never know when you'll meet the CFO.
Yeah.
That's right. He was just the senior VP. Like,
Yeah, no big deal. Yeah.
Well, and I'll just add to that, not related to United, but to plugs for students in terms of attending, because we had several students who got internships this summer from several BLI alumni because they attended. And one of the BLI alumni who's not on the call, actually, after he did a BLI at over Zoom during COVID, and he then opened up an internship for any student that was in BLI to apply for. So that was pretty cool.
And I don't know if anyone on this call is interested in opportunities, but I will say that airlines are hiring, quite like every industry actually right now, but airlines are hiring pretty aggressively right now. So if it is something that you are interested in and have the background for, I would encourage you to go to like, for Delta, it's like deltacareers.com, see if there's anything that like fits your background and that you feel that you're like eligible for, and then feel free to reach out to me and I can submit a referral online. And if I know someone in that space, I'm happy to make an introduction, because applying cold can be pretty tough, and there is a lot of demand. Yeah, obviously, if you're like interested in this call, like working in the airline industry is pretty cool. Comes with some really great perks, like Benji and I can elaborate on, but pretty much we fly for free, our parents fly free, so that's why they're so invested in this call. And yeah, but I will say that the pay is maybe less than what you'd get elsewhere, but it comes with its own benefits too. So yeah, and I'm sure Benji, you guys have a site and are hiring aggressively as well.
Yeah, no, to that point, if you are interested in either living in Chicago or working for the up and coming next best airline, then yeah, definitely reach out. It's a lot of fun to work in the airline, and like Matt said, some fun perks and get to travel, and it's definitely an interesting industry to be a part of.
Okay, great, guys. I love the conversation. I think everyone else really did as well. If there's anything else anyone wants to add, or Rabbi Sue, you could take us away.
Yeah, so we decided to just keep going with the conversation and not going to breakout groups tonight, because this was really great. And I was getting a lot of private messages about how much people were enjoying this. So thank you so much, Benji and Matt. This was really great. And Eric for moderating the panel. The three of you were a great team. And it was really, really great. Really interesting. Our next BLI alumni event is in December 8th, I believe. And you'll get stuff about it. If you know of people, I think everybody here has actually officially filled out the membership for BLI Alumni Network. If you know of other people who haven't become part of the network, please let me know. Either you can let Jason know because he's helping with recruitment, or you can let me know, or please reach out to them and ask them to become part of the network. So, and if you guys have suggestions for things that you'd like to see us do, please reach out to us and let us know. But thanks for being on, to everybody. And again, thanks to Matt, Benji, and Eric for tonight. This was I thought this was outstanding.
My pleasure, guys. Have a great night.
Good night.
Thank you. Awesome talk.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
You were great, Matt. You were great.
Thanks.